Hello everyone, I am Shatrupa and today I have bought some programming logic MCQs. So these MCQs are a sample of what kind of question do come in actual online test. So let's have a look at the first question. So there is a little issue with this first question. Just see, it says find the output of the following code snippet, okay? So below the code is a C code, okay? As you can see, it says hash include stdio.h. Okay, so this is a C code. It says that float value of f is assigned to 0.5, right? So if it says if f is equal to 0.5, then print yes. So what most of us will do, we'll print the answers as yes, okay? We'll tick on A and we'll come back home. But that is not correct, okay? The answer here is no. Why? Why is the answer no? Because this is the value of f which is directly saying it's 0.5, okay? But this one is a float value. So float value of any variable is equal to 0.5 then 6 times 0. This is the actual value and this value is not equal to simply 0.5, okay? So this answer will be printed as no. But if in the if condition we would have written it as f is equal to float of 0.5, then this would have been printed as yes. Or if we would have printed if f is equal to 0.5f, then also the output would have been yes. But since these two are not written in the given code, it is simply saying f is equal to 0.5, the answer will be no, okay? So float of f is equal to 0.5 is not equal to f is equal to 0.5, okay? Keep this in mind. It always has to be typecasted. It has to be typecasted in order to compare, okay? If no typecasting is done, then the comparison is invalid, okay? So the output will be printed as no. So here the output is no, that is option B. Okay, the answer is option B. So moving on to the next question, it says find the output of the following code snippet. It is again a C code. This is based on post and pre, increment and decrement. Okay, post and pre, increment and decrement. Now it says a is equal to 10, x is equal to a minus minus plus a. Okay, now you see the value of a is 10, okay? Here the value won't change. Why? Because this is a post decrement, so whatever the value of a is, it will be first printed and then this value will be decremented to 9. Now it will be plus and now this value will be assigned to a, and since this is a pre-increment, first the value will be increased and then the addition will be performed, okay? So now when this 9 goes here, the value is incremented to 10, okay? So the output will become 10 plus 10, which is equal to 20. Okay, so here answer is option B. The output will be 20 and answer is your option B again, okay? So what is happening? Whenever there is a post decrement, the value first gets written, it's first executed with the previous value and then the value is decremented. And next, if it is an increment operation, then first the value will be incremented and then the operation will be performed, okay? But had this one been a plus plus, then what would have happened? Here 9 would have been written, okay? Here it would be 9, then the value would have been, instead of 20, it would have been 19, right? So then the answer would have been option C, okay? So moving on to the next question. It says find the post traversal from the given pre-order traversal, okay? So we know there are 3 types of traversal. One is in order, one is pre-order, one is post order. Okay, so here we don't have this in order, we only have pre-order and we need to find out the post order. So for that, what we need to do, let's write down first the pre-order. The pre-order says it's 17, then 13, then 9, then 11, 15, 19, 23 and 21. Okay, we know in pre-order the first node is always the root node, the next node is the left node, then comes the right node. Okay, so following this concept, we need to find out the post order traversal. Okay, so from here what we'll be doing, we'll consider the first one as the root node. Okay, now whatever number is less than 17 will be on the left side, whatever number that is greater than 17 will be on the right side. Okay, so less than 17 it's 13, then 9, then 11, then 15. Okay, greater than 17 is 19, 23 and 21. Now again let's consider this to be in pre-order. Okay, so when this is in pre-order, again the first node, that is 13, becomes the root node. Now whatever is smaller than 13 will come on the left hand side. So smaller than 13 is 9 and 11, and greater than 13 will come on the right hand side, that is 15. Similarly here the first node will again be a parent node, that is the root node. Now you see 23 and 21 both are greater than 19, right? So there will be no left node, this left node will be left blank. On the right node we'll write 23 and 21. Okay, now what will happen, now this one again is in pre-order, we'll consider this in pre-order. So it will be written 9 will be the root node, and since 11 is greater than 9 it will be on the right hand side. Similarly here 23 will be the root node, and since 21 is less than 23 it will be on the left side. Okay, so we have got our tree. So how is our tree? It's 17, then here it was 13, then here it was 19, then here it was 9, then here it was 15, then here it was 11, then here it was 23, then here it was 21. So this is our tree. Okay, so in post order traversal what it is first the left node, then the right node, and then the root node. Okay, this is the basic concept of post order traversal. So what is the left node over here? We don't have any left node, so we'll straight start with the right node. So it will be 11, then comma, what is the root node? It's 9. Then again we have another right node, because 9 is the left node, so it will be 15. Then what is the root node? Root node is 13. Now 13 is again a left node, so what is the right node? Right node is 19. But if you see, then this 19 has some child nodes. Okay, so it will again start from here. So after 13 it will be 21. Now 21 is the left child, there is no right child of 23, so the root will be printed, that is 23. Now 23 is having a parent, that is 19. Now 19 and 13 they both are having a parent, that is 17. Okay, now if you consider this, you see this is there is no left node, so this is the right node, this is the root node. Okay, again this is the left node, this is the right node, this is the root node. Again if you see, this is a left node, there is no right node, so this is the root node. Okay, again if you see that this is the, now this is the main tree, so this is the left node, this is the right node, and this is the root node. So everywhere we are following this left, right and root, we are following this pattern. So this is the correct post order traversal. So let's see where does our answer match to be 9, 11, then 9, then 15, then 13, then 21, then 23, then 19 and then 17. So I think that is in option A. Okay, so option A is our answer, and this is the output. This is the post order traversal. Okay, I would say one more thing to this question. Always remember, if you are given this in order and you are given pre-order, okay, you need to find the post order, then remember, then in that case this pre-order is only used once to find the root node in the first case, to find root node in first case. Okay, all other time we will be using in order, rest of the time we will be using in order, okay, to find the remaining set of tree. Okay, but if there is no in order given, only you have pre-order, like in this question, and we need to find the post order, you just have pre-order, you need to find the post order, then every time you will consider the tree to be in, tree is always in pre-order state. Okay, that is the first node is the root node, then the left node, then the right node. But don't do this mistake, don't consider this thing all whenever in order is given. If in order is given, you need to consider in order. Okay, in order gets a priority. Only it's this pre-order is used once for the first time when you find the root of the tree. Rest all the time throughout finding the nodes of the tree, you'll always use an in order traversal. Okay, so always remember, whenever you're given in order and pre-order both to find post order, then the first one is only for the root where you use this pre-order, and for remaining all you use in order. But if you're only given pre-order and you have to find post order like this question, then you can consider every step in every tree node to be in pre-order. That is okay. Okay, but if in order is given and you only use pre-order to find the post order, then your answer will be wrong. Okay, moving on to the next question. It again says that find the output of the following code. So it's hash include stdio.h int main. Now see, this is a term which says constant. Now what is a constant? Okay, constant used before any variable. Okay, if it is used before any variable, this implies this value can't be changed throughout. It's a constant. Okay, it can't be changed, its value can't be changed throughout the program. Okay, now where we see this keyword constant? We see this keyword constant in C++. Okay, while in Java what we use the keyword final. This is used in Java. Okay, so if anywhere you come across this word final and constant, remember the values of these variable can't be changed throughout the program. Okay, now you see it says constant int a is equal to 32. Now always remember second point. First point is this: the variable's value can't be changed. The variable's value can't be changed throughout the program. Now the second point to this is the value of the variable. The value of variable has to be declared or initialized at the time of declaration of the variable. Okay, whenever I state that constant int a, at that time only I have to assign the value 32. I can't do that later in the code. This is an error. If this is done somewhere, then it is an error. Okay, like in this code it says that constant int a, then it says a is equal to 32. So what it is? It is a compile time error. Had this been written like this, constant int a is equal to 32, then this would be correct. Then the output would be printed as a is 32. Okay, but since it is written as constant int a and then a is defined as 32, this is wrong. We can't do this. Okay, why we can't do? Because constant and final, these two keywords follow two rules. First, the value of the variable can't be changed throughout the program. Okay, second, the value of the variable has to be declared or initialized at the time of declaration of the variable. Whenever I declare the variable to be final or constant, at that time only I have to assign the value to that variable. Okay, I can't do that later in the code. So here my answer will be option B, that is compile time error. Option B will be my answer, that is compile time error. Okay, so moving on to next question. This is a very theoretical question. It says, what is the function used to describe the situation when a function in the base class is defined in the child class? So let's read this question properly. When function of base class, where it is defined? It's defined in child class. Okay, what does this situation means? Okay, now most of us think that it is a case of inheritance. It's true, it is in case of inheritance. But what is this scenario called? What is actually happening when the same function of base class gets defined in the child class? What is happening when the, suppose I have a, say, okay, wait, say I have a class A, and I have class A, and I have defined a function, say void sum. Okay, where I have written A is equal to B plus C. Now I have another class, say B, which extends A, and again I have another the same function sum. Here I have written D is equal to E plus F. Okay, so you see this void sum and this void sum functions are same. So what is happening whenever I extend a class, that is class A is extended or inherited within the class B, then this class B becomes the child class of class A, right? So when this case happens, there are chances that this sum function shall be overridden by this sum function. Okay, this means the child class overrides the function of the base class. Okay, so here are two concepts. Okay, one is inheritance, one is overriding. Okay, so when does this overriding happen? This overriding happens at runtime. It does not happen at compile time. At runtime, at the end moment, the compiler decides, okay, let's not take the function of base class, rather let's take the function of child class. That is when this overriding happens. Okay, so whenever you have defined a function in child class which has the same function in the base class, that is known as function overriding. Okay, so here the answer is option C. It is happening in inheritance, but this concept or this situation is known as overriding. Okay, so it's not asking us what is the concept. Okay, it is asking us what is the function used to describe. So this is function overriding. Okay, whenever we override or we write the same function in the child class as that of the base class, it's known as function overriding. Okay, so here the answer is option C, that is overriding. Now moving on to the next question, it again says find the output of the following code. Okay, so this is a very interesting question. Now you see it says it has to print something like this: Java is my favorite language. Okay, and then it says plus 8. Now what does this plus 8 do? Now whenever it simply says print f and within a double quote there is a string and then suddenly it says plus 8, it means simply remove 8 spaces from the beginning. Okay, it will simply remove 8 spaces from the beginning. So these are 8 spaces from the beginning. These will get removed and the output will be printed as favorite language. Okay. So if here it would have been 6, similarly it would have removed till Java is, and it would have printed my favorite language. Okay. Accordingly it will change. If this would have been 7, it would have removed till M, and it would be Y favorite language. Okay. But in this case the output is only favorite language because it's plus 8, so it will remove till Java is mine and it will print favorite language. So your answer is in option C. Okay. Now moving on to the next question. Find the output of the following code. Okay. Okay. Now the first says printf KSI. So sorry, KSI. There is no issue. There is nothing faulty. So it will simply print KSI. Now it says \b. Now \b means backspace. Okay. Backspace by 1. Okay. So when this is printed, the arrow is here. Now backslash means it will go back to this I position. Okay. And what it will print? It will print KSLHI. Okay. Now my enter the cursor is here. Now it says \r. Now \r refers to restart. Okay. Restart means now this cursor will straight move to the first position and it will start replacing. So K will be replaced by H, S will be replaced by A, and then there is nothing to replace, so it will simply print LHI. So this is the output. So my answer is in option B. Okay, option B is my output. Always remember this backslash B is backspace by 1 and backslash R is restart. Restart means wherever, no matter where the cursor is, it will always go to the beginning of the string. Okay. And backslash N we all know it's for the new line. Okay. So moving on to the next question. It says which type of class allows only one object of it to be created. Okay. So this is a very conceptual question which is often asked. Okay. If not in MCQs, then in interviews it's often asked that which class allows you to only create one object. So this is a answer is singleton class. Okay. A singleton class will always allow a class to singleton class is a class which will allow you to create only one object. You can't create more than one object. Why? Because a singleton class has a private constructor and a private reference of class. Okay. I'm not explaining these 2 points in detail right now, but remember a singleton class can be any class where a constructor is a private constructor and the class reference is a private reference. Where do you see a singleton class? You see a singleton class only in Java. Okay, you can't create it in C++. So a singleton class is a class which has only one object. Why it has one object? Because the class has a private constructor and the class has a private reference of the class. Okay, what is the reference of the class? Suppose I create say class A. Okay, and how do I create a private reference? I simply write private ATT. So this is the reference of class A which is of private type. Okay, it's as simple as that. So the answer is singleton class. So singleton class is the only class which will allow you to create one object, a single object. Thereby the name is singleton class. Okay. Why? Because these are the two reasons. That because it has a private constructor and a private reference of the class. See, these two conditions must satisfy in order to fulfill a singleton class. Okay. You can't skip any one. Okay. Now moving on to the next question. Find the output of the following code. Okay, so A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20 and C is equal to 5. Okay, so D is equal to A less than B less than C. Okay. Now, whenever you see such kind of question, remember this is a conditional statement. It's a conditional statement. So what happens in this statement is that it solves one operator at a time. If the value is true, it returns 1. If the value is false, it returns 0. But it should be one operator at a time. So what it will do, it will compare A's value is 10, 10 less than B's value is 20, less than C. So is 10 less than 20? It's true. So it will return 1. Okay, now 1 less than C. Now C's value is 5. So is 1 less than 5? It's true. So it will again return 1. So what will be the value of D? It will be 1. So in printf percentage %d comma D, the output will be printed as 1. Okay. So whenever you get these kind of question whenever you get these kind of question where there is a condition, always remember it operates how? It operates one operator at a time. It goes from left to right. This one will be executed first. So 10 less than 20, it's true. So it will return 1. Now 1 in comparison to C. Now don't place any value. It will always take 1. Whatever the value is returned, that only will be placed. So 1 is 1 less than 5. It is. So it will again be true. It will return 1. So here the answer is option A. Okay. And the value will be printed as 1. This will be the output. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Which of the concept of OOPS means only exposing the necessary information to the clients? Okay, this is simple. That is abstraction. Okay, abstraction is the concept. Why in abstraction? We only show the necessary details, hiding its functionality. We show only necessary details and hide the actual functionality. Okay, for example, if you consider a real time example, suppose a car. You know that car has 5 gears, right? You know a car has 5 gears. But do you know how those gears are arranged inside an engine? You don't know their arrangement, right? So, and we are not even bothered about the arrangement till the time our car is giving us a perfect speed in whatever gear we shift. Okay. So, that is a case of abstraction. You actually don't know about the arrangement, but you know that there are 5 gears and you know how to use it. If you take another example, let's take something related to your coding world, okay, something like that. Then suppose I have a class which is an abstract class, say A. Now I just want to show the user this class. So what I'll do, I will define a function over here. I'll just give the declaration of the function. Say the function is void sum. Okay, and I won't declare it. I won't define it. So these curly braces won't be there. I won't define it. I will again inherit this class as another class. I'll inherit this class in another class where I'll define the sum and I will write the code. Okay. Remember, whenever you have an abstract class and you have a function which is an abstract function, this is an abstract function, then this abstract function has to be somewhere defined within the child class. An abstract function has to be defined in child class. It's mandatory. In any of the other child class, I have to define abstract function. It can't be that I just keep declaring it in every class and I don't define it throughout. So that is not applicable. You'll get a error message at the end of the code. Okay. So always remember what abstraction does. Abstraction will just show you what you need. It will not show you the functionality. Just like in class A, we have declared void sum. So someone using class A can only see void sum. he'll not know how this void sum works, okay? But this void sum will be executed. Why? Because this class is inherited in class B, where I have defined this sum function, okay? So here your answer is abstraction. So abstraction is the concept where we hide all the unnecessary information that a client doesn't need, and we expose only the necessary information, okay? The best example being the gears of the car, okay? You really don't need to know how the gears and the wirings are arranged within the engine, okay? What you really need to know that which gear works at which point, okay? So now moving on to the next question, it says, where are the local variables stored? Always remember, the local variables are stored in stack, always, okay? Immaterial of what it is, where it is defined within a function, within a class. If it is a local variable, it is mandatory that it will be stored in stack. There is no other location for local variables, it's always a stack, okay? So your answer is option B, that is stack. Now the next question says that which of the following is the correct declaration for a pointer to a function that returns a float? Okay, now you need a pointer. Always remember, we denote a pointer by an asterisk, okay? So a pointer, say here the pointer is f, which is of what type? It is of float type. Why? Because it is returning float and it is a pointer to a function. Done. This is my answer, okay? A pointer is written with an asterisk. Here you can consider it as f. It returns the value in terms of float and it is a function. So this will be my declaration. So wherever this one is, that is the answer. It's in option C. So option C is my answer, okay? So always remember, a float value, a pointer is always defined. If it's a function, it is defined within the bracket, okay? This bracket is mandatory, else this will get confused, okay? The system will get confused with this and this. It will not understand what it is. So it's always important that we specify this within the brackets, okay? So here your answer is option C. Now moving on to the next question, it says, consider the array. These are inserted into a max heap one by one. The resultant max heap would be. Okay, so before we start working on this, we should know what is a max heap. So a max heap is nothing but a tree which is completely filled with right child and left child, okay? Now how this is filled, okay? Now suppose I just took a number that is 50, okay? Now 50 is the root node. Now it will have a left child, it will have the right child. Now what is the rule? The first rule is that first the left child is filled, then the right child is filled, okay? So first left will be filled, then right will be filled. Then again it will go to the left child, it will fill the left child, then will fill the right child. Then again it will go to the right, it will fill the left, then the right. So this is how it works. It works across like this, left to right, okay? Now one more thing. Suppose this is your say 40, this is say 42. Now this is say 45 and this is 10, okay? Suppose this is the tree. Now you see, this is the parent node for this and this, okay? For this is the left, this is the right, this is the parent node. Now parent node can never be small than the child node. You see, the child node is 45 while the parent node is 40. So what will happen? A swap will happen between these two numbers. So how will the tree look? The tree will look something like this: 45, 42, 40 and 10. Okay, so what is the second point? Parent node always greater than child node. Okay, it can't be less than the child node. So now let's follow these two rules, that first the left child is filled, then the right child, and the parent node is always greater than the child node. Let's follow this. Now let's consider this. you see this is 55. This is the first node. Okay. Now my left child will be filled with 40, the right child will be filled with 45. Okay. Now I can see that both the nodes are small compared to the parent node, so it's okay. Now I move on. Then it says it is 48, then it says it's 10. Now wait. Now you see this is 40, this is 48. So the parent node is smaller than the child node. So what will happen? A swap will happen. So how will this tree look? This will look something like this. 55, then 48, here 45, then here 40, and here 10. Just swap the position within them. Okay, don't do any other kind of swapping. Okay, next here will come, it is 46 and then it is 15. Now again you see 46 is greater than the parent node. So what will happen? Again swap. So how will my tree look? It will be 55, then 48, then 46, then 40, here 10, then here 45, here 15. Okay. Now you see all the parent node are greater than the child node, and we have first filled the left child, then the right child. Okay, this is one node, this is one node, this is another one. Okay, so now this is our resultant max heap. Max heap is very easy. All you need to remember is first fill the left child, then the right child, and the parent node is always greater than the child node. Just remember these two things. If not, then what happens? No, swapping happens here. Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next question. It says, how many times is a Java code compiled? The Java code is always compiled twice. Why? Because first it is compiled by the compiler. Second, it is done by the interpreter. When? This one is done when the source code is converted to when the source code gets loaded to the class loader. At that time it's done. Second, when this class loader, this class.class file is generated after the file is loaded into the class loader. So when the class file is generated, when this is converted into machine language, at that time the interpreter does the scanning. It checks the code again. Okay. So remember, Java code is compiled twice. First by the compiler when the source code is loaded by the class loader, and second by the interpreter when this class loader converts the source code into .class file. That time the interpreter checks it before converting the code into machine language. So the Java code is compiled twice, and thereby it is more safe and secure. Okay, it's error free. Okay. So here your answer is option B. That is twice. So moving on to the next and the final question. Which of the following can't be overloaded? Okay. Now see, we know constructors can be overloaded. Constructor overloading is there. Okay. Function overloading is also there. Okay, you can overload a function by having the same name but different parameters. Okay, but destructors, they can't be overloaded. We can't overload a destructor. Okay, because a class itself creates a destructor and destructs the constructor. So a destructor can't be overloaded. Okay, so here my answer is option B. Okay, that is destructors. So by this we come to an end of this question. So that's all for the day. Thank you everyone.